Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Time. We thought, why not take a walk down memory lane and revisit every World Cup ever? All 12 of them. In some ways, it is remarkable that cricket's first ever World Cup only happened in 1975. The first ever international cricket fixture happened all the way back in 1844 between noted cricket superpowers Canada and the United States. A gap of 135 years between the first international and the first World Cup seems rather excessive, doesn't it? The first international football match took place in 1872, and the first World Cup happened in 1930, a mere 58-year wait. The first international rugby league match occurred in 1904, and the first World Cup in 1954. Even basketball, a largely homogeneous American sport until the late 20th century, only went a little more than 50 years from invention to a World Cup. So why the delay with cricket? What reason could cricket possibly have for such a delay in its strive for global reach? Well, principally, cricket has literally never been one for words like globalization. Hell, the original name for the ICC was literally the Imperial Cricket Conference, made up of South Africa, England, and Australia. I don't think that in the history of sport there has ever been a more evil-sounding organizational name. The other reason is that cricket did try an early precursor to the World Cup, and it went so badly that the idea of an international tournament was basically shelved indefinitely. In 1912, the Imperial Cricket Conference decided to host a triangular tournament amongst themselves. This tournament went as badly as it possibly could have gone. For one, England dog-walked the tournament, winning 4 out of their 6 matches, with the 2 draws being rained-out tests. Secondly, the tournament organizers got a little unlucky. 1912 just happened to be the wettest summer since records started being kept over 150 years earlier. This problem was exacerbated by the tests being 3-day tests instead of 5.
It's been 84 years.
Then the opposition, for varying reasons, sucked. A dispute between players and management meant that Australia left their best players at home, while South Africa were caught unprepared as they played on pitches instead of the mats on which South African cricket was played on at the time. Indeed, South Africa would go on to lose in every non-washout match they played in. The disastrous nature of this tournament basically put paid to the idea of tournament cricket for the next half a century. The idea of tournament cricket became even more impractical as the game, much to the ICC's disgust I imagine, grew. If a 3-team World Cup was at the mercy of the elements, what more a 4-team World Cup, as was the case when New Zealand joined? Or a 5 or 6 nation World Cup, as would be the case when the West Indies and India were made full members of the ICC. If every team played each other once, accounting for rest days and the like, and adding in a final, as was de jure in these tournaments, it would take upwards of 6 to 8 weeks minimum to finish a tournament. And that's not even discussing how these tournaments would have basically, until the 1950s, been precursors to Australia versus England finals. Such was the gap between the 2 Ashes playing nations and the rest, barring flashes of excellence from the Windies. The origins of one-day cricket are a little murky, but we do know that the oldest one-day cricket tournament in the world started in India in 1951. The tournament, known as the Puja Cricket Tournament, was a 50-over tournament held at the Palace Oval Ground in Tripunitura, India. It still runs to this very day. Kerala Varma Kelapan is thought to be the originator of this tournament. Skipping forward a few years, we get to 1962, where the first official limited overs tournament was held in England. A tournament with 65 over innings, it featured 4 English counties. While a humble tournament, it was apparently reasonably profitable, or commercial at any rate, drawing television coverage as per Wikipedia. The following year, the first full-scale one-day competition between first-class teams was played, the knockout Gillette Cup, which was won by Sussex. The number of overs was reduced to 60 for the 1964 season. In 1966, England, the rest of the World 11, and the West Indies played in a World Cricket Cup, which England won. In 1967, a similar tournament was held with the Windies replaced by Pakistan. The 1967 version of this tournament showed a potential issue with this kind of tournament. England failed to make the finals, and people could not be bothered to watch a match between Pakistan and the rest of the world. The story of international rugby goes that William Webb Ellis picked up a football, soccer for our American brethren, and ran with it, and thus rugby was born. In a similar vein, in 1970-71, England and Australia found themselves in the middle of a wet third test at the MCG. With absolutely no chance of having a complete test match, it was agreed that the 2 teams would play a one-day match, which was to be known as a one-day international.
Oh, and he's out. A beautiful catch. And Bill Lawry, the Australian captain, diving. Court boycott, so he's out.
The basic laws of the game would be unchanged. The only difference being that each team would have 40 overs, which consisted of 8 deliveries to score as many runs as they could. Australia won the toss and elected to field first. England were rolled for 190 runs, and Australia secured a relatively comfortable 5-wicket victory. International cricket's famed ability to change absolutely nothing in the face of change was on full display, as there were only 3 more ODI games played the following year. There's a good chance that nothing major would have changed in world cricket had there not been an unlikely catalyst of change.
4 runs. Over Lever's head, bouncing well back from the fence. He hit that with tremendous power.
So, at this rate, we've had 3 mini World Cups of varying degrees, and the problem seems to remain the same. People can't be bothered.
We don't care. Let me tell you, we don't care.
As of June 1973, we've also only had 5 actual one-day international matches in the 2 years of its existence. So it could be argued that the cricket boards themselves can't be too bothered. Enter the 1973 Women's World Cup. Honestly, this might be the most unlikely World Cup in the history of World Cups, in any sport. There had only been 5 men's ODI matches ever played at the time when the Women's World Cup started. Ever. First of all, the men had only played in 5 ODI matches to this point. In total, ever. The first women's ODI match was played in 1973, in the World Cup itself. The very definition of figuring it out along the way. The tournament was the brainchild of Sir Jack Hayward, an English businessman / philanthropist who was once the president of Wolverhampton Wanderers. He supposedly contributed £40,000 to the costs. The tournament itself was not particularly memorable, outside of the fact that England had 2 sides for some reason, England and Young England, as well as the fact that while in the men's game, the West Indies played under one banner, Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados played as separate nations during this World Cup. There was also an International 11, which consisted of a hodgepodge of cricketers from the colonies. This hodgepodge included Australia and England, which doesn't make sense because Australia and England had their own teams. So why would there be cricketers from Australia and England in an International 11 when Australia and England are already internationals that are represented in this World Cup? It seems like those players were given, a participation trophy, which also doesn't make sense because that's apparently the generation that didn't believe in participation trophies. But that sounds a lot like a participation trophy.
Yep.
Anyway, the tournament itself was not the well-coiffed, well-run version of international tournament cricket that we are used to. The pitches were subpar, the coverage was bare, and the coverage that was there was more focused on the marital status of the cricketers. The umpires had never umpired an international game in their lives. And apparently, it showed. But it happened, it was completed, and England won. Which meant there had to be a male version. In 1973, the ICC, at this point known as the International Cricket Conference, decided that it needed to grow the game. I've been told that the 70s represented a weird time. And nowhere is this more evident than in the fact that it represented a time when the ICC were actively trying to grow the men's game. They would soon heal themselves of this affliction, as seen by the fact that the first World Cup had 8 nations, while the most recent World Cup, in 2019, 44 years later, had a whopping 10. Real growth, ICC. You do not want to put that on an inflation tracker.
Ralph, I don't know where you're getting your statistics.
By 1974, it was agreed that England would host the tournament, as they represented the history of the game and supposedly a neutral site. It is amusing that England was seen as a neutral site, despite the fact that they were quite literally in the tournament. I guess they had the umpires who were the least likely to stitch up the opposition. It was also decided that the tournament would be made up of 60-over games, meaning each team had 60 overs to play. There would also be 6-ball overs, which, as you can recall, was a change from the first ODI, which had 8-ball overs. The ball would be red and the kit would be white. The ICC invited 8 teams to the tournament. England and Australia were seen as the leading cricketing nations in the world at the time, while India, Pakistan, and the West Indies represented emerging cricketing nations. Sri Lanka and New Zealand represented up-and-coming cricketing nations, while East Africa represented an opportunity for smaller countries to be represented in the World Cup. They also represented an opportunity to give Africa a representation in the World Cup. While we're on the topic, given the difference in language, culture, and the varying degrees of love for cricket, it was always unlikely that East Africa would prove to be a success on the international stage. South Africa were noticeable exceptions to the list of teams invited to the World Cup. This was on account of apartheid being, not good. Teams would ramp up their seriousness for the tournament in the months leading up to the tournament. And by that I mean that England played in 3 matches, 2 against New Zealand and 1 against India. Not until the 2023 Cricket World Cup had there ever been such little tournament-specific preparation for a World Cup. Honestly, England had played in 15 of the 18 ODI matches up to date. They had won 8 of the completed 12 matches that they had played on, and they were hosting the home World Cup. And yet, the West Indies at 9-4 were the favourites at the bookies, followed by the English at 11-4. East Africa, the plucky upstarts that they were quite correctly placed dead last with the bookies having them at 1,500-1. Teams played in some warm-up games against county sides in an effort to acclimatise to the conditions, as well as acclimatise to this new game, since once again, it was very rarely played. Australia decided that they would forego this participation and instead continue their preparations in their tour of Canada. They then suffered what I must assume were fear-inducing losses to East Canada and Toronto. Before we discuss the tournament proper, we are quickly going to go over the format of the tournament as well as the rules which were in place. There were 8 teams divided into 2 groups. Group A had England, India, New Zealand and East Africa. Group B had the West Indies, Australia, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. The overall format of the tournament was a round-robin stage in which each team played the other teams of their groups once. The top 2 teams from each group advanced to the semi-finals. In the semi-finals, the winners of Group A faced the runner-ups of Group B. The winners of Group B faced the runner-ups of Group A, and the winners advanced to the final. In the final, the winner of each semi-final played against each other to determine the champion of the World Cup. There was to be 60 overs per innings, with each side allowed to bat for a maximum of 60 overs and the bowlers restricted to a maximum of 12 overs. This was different from the current ODI format, which features 50 overs per innings. As previously mentioned, they would play in red ball and traditional white clothing. Unlike the modern ODI format, there were no fielding restrictions such as power plays or limitations on the number of fielders outside the 30-yard circles. Teams could place fielders anywhere on the field as per their strategies. In the 1975 Cricket World Cup, rest days were scheduled in between matches. If a match could not be completed due to rain or other factors, then it would be completed on the rest days. There were no rules for rain-affected games such as Duck with Lewis Stern or any other way of contriving a winner in a rain-affected match. That meant the game had to be completed on the rest day. In the event that the match was not completed on the rest day, the points would be split between the 2 teams during the group phases. In the knockout tournament, however, during the semi-finals, if the match could not be completed either on the main day or the rest day, then the team that was the highest placed in the tournament, i.e. the team that finished highest in the group, would go through to the final. In the final, if the match could not be completed due to rain or any other reason, then the trophy would be shared. There were no reserve days on the final. In other words, there had to be a winner or a shared winner at the end of the day. In the event of a tied match, the team that had lost the least amount of wickets would be declared the winner. In the event that both teams had the same amount of lost wickets, then the team that had the highest run rate would be declared the winner. The World Cup would run from the 7th of June to the 21st of June and would have 15 games in total. So we know what teams were in the World Cup, but what teams were in the World Cup? We did what? In the lead up to the 1975 World Cup, England had a mixed run of form in ODIs and Test matches. One-day cricket was still a relatively new format, with only a handful of ODIs played. In the months leading up to the World Cup, England played a series of ODIs and Test matches against India, Pakistan and New Zealand. Their performance was inconsistent, with some victories and some defeats. However, England had a strong team on paper, featuring experienced and talented players like Tony Greig, an all-rounder and one of the best cricketers of his time. Greig was known for his aggressive batting, skillful bowling and excellent fielding abilities. Dennis Amos, a prolific opening batsman, Amos was known for his stylish stroke play and his ability to build big innings. He scored a brilliant century, 137 runs, in the opening match of the tournament against India. Alan Knott, considered one of the greatest wicketkeepers of all time, Knott was an agile and skillful wicketkeeper and a useful lower-order batsman. Heath Fletcher, a technically sound middle-order batsman, Fletcher was a key member of the England batting lineup and captained the side on a few occasions. John Snow, a fast bowler with a fearsome reputation, Snow was England's leading pace bowler and known for his ability to generate bounce and movement off the pitch. Being the host nation for the inaugural World Cup, England was expected to perform well and challenge for the title. The team had a good blend of experienced players and young talent, with a well-balanced lineup comprising of attacking batsmen, quality all-rounders and a strong bowling attack. England's overall form leading into the World Cup might have been inconsistent, but the team had the potential to perform well in the tournament. Leading up to the 1975 World Cup, Australia had a competitive and talented team, featuring some of the finest cricketers of the era. The team was captained by Ian Chappell and included players such as Greg Chappell, Ian's younger brother, an elegant middle-order batsman. Greg was one of Australia's finest cricketers and an outstanding fielder. Dennis Lillee, a fearsome fast bowler, Lillee was known for his pace, accuracy and ability to generate movement off the pitch. He was one of the best fast bowlers of all time. Jeff Thomson, another top-class fast bowler, Thomson formed a lethal bowling partnership with Dennis Lillee, terrorising batsmen with his raw pace. Rod Marsh, a reliable wicket-keeper and a useful lower-order batsman, Marsh had excellent glove work and contributed with the bat when needed. Doug Walters, a gifted batsman who was known for his aggressive stroke play and ability to score quickly. Walters was an important member of the Australian batting order. In the lead-up to the 1975 World Cup, Australia had played several test matches and ODIs against England, New Zealand and Pakistan. The team had mixed results, registering some wins and some losses. However, Australia's overall performance was quite competitive and they had a strong squad capable of challenging for the title. During this period, Australia had a formidable batting lineup and a lethal fast bowling duo in Dennis Lillee and Jeff Thomson. The team's aggressive approach and winning mentality made them a dangerous side in the tournament. The West Indies were captained by Clive Lloyd, who was a powerful middle-order batsman and an inspirational leader. Lloyd was the cornerstone of the West Indian batting lineup. Viv Richards, one of the greatest batsmen in cricketing history, Richards was known for his aggressive and dominant batting style. Gordon Greenridge, a prolific opening batsman, Greenridge provided a solid foundation at the top of the order. Roy Fredericks, another explosive opening batsman, Fredericks provided a formidable opening partnership with Greenridge. Alvin Kalicharan, a stylish left-handed batsman, Kalicharan was an essential part of the West Indian middle order. Andy Roberts, a fast bowler with great control and accuracy. Roberts was the spearhead of the West Indian bowling attack. Leading into the World Cup, the Windies had a strong and experienced team. Their batting lineup was one of the most powerful in the world and their fast bowling attack, led by Andy Roberts, was lethal. The West Indies' form leading up to the World Cup was impressive, making them one of the top contenders for the title. India were captained by Srinivasa Raghavan, Venkata. Their key players included Sunil Gavaskar, a technically sound opening batsman. Gavaskar was known for his patience and ability to play a long innings. Gundappa Vishwanath, a stylish middle-order batsman. Vishwanath was a key player in the Indian batting lineup. Ishan Singh Bedi, a legendary left-arm spinner. Bedi was the leader of India's famed spin quartet. Eknath Solkar, a brilliant all-rounder. Solkar contributed with both bat and ball and was known for his exceptional fielding skills. Farooq Engineer, a reliable wicket-keeper and an aggressive opening batsman, Engineer provided India with impetus at the top of the order. India's form leading up to the World Cup was inconsistent, with a few good performances in test matches. Their spin-heavy bowling attack, led by Bishan Singh Bedi, was considered a major threat, but the team's overall form did not make them one of the top contenders for the title. Pakistan were captained by Asif Iqbal, who was a versatile middle-order batsman. They also had Zahir Abbas, one of the finest batsmen of his era. Abbas was a prolific run scorer in the middle order. Wasim Raja, a talented all-rounder, Raja contributed with both bat and ball and was a key player for Pakistan. And Sarfraz Nawaz, a skillful fast bowler, Nawaz was the leader of the Pakistani pace attack and known for his ability to swing the ball. Pakistan had a competitive team with a strong batting lineup and a good bowling attack, featuring both spin and pace options. They had shown good form in test matches leading up to the World Cup, with victories against top teams. Pakistan's overall form made them a top contender for the tournament. New Zealand had Glenn Turner, a prolific opening batsman and captain. Turner was the backbone of New Zealand's batting lineup and known for his ability to score big runs. He was also quite possibly New Zealand's first truly great batsman. Richard Hadlee, a legendary all-rounder, Hadlee was an exceptional fast bowler and a useful middle-order batsman. John Morrison, a solid middle-order batsman and a useful off-spinner, Morrison contributed to the team's balance. Dale Hadlee, Richard Hadley's brother and a talented fast bowler, Dale formed a potent new ball partnership with his sibling. New Zealand's form heading into the World Cup was mixed. With some decent victories and a few disappointing losses in both Test matches and ODIs, the team had a decent mix of batsmen and bowlers, but lacked the overall depth and experience compared to stronger teams like Australia and the West Indies. While they were not considered one of the top contenders for the title, New Zealand was a competitive side capable of causing upsets. Sri Lanka were captained by Anura Tennakun, an elegant and technically sound opening batsman who played with a lot of discipline and patience. He was a skilled captain who led Sri Lankan cricket in their early years of ODI cricket. Sunil Gavaskar, a stylish and attacking top-order batsman who was known for his excellent footwork and ability to hit boundaries. He was a very good fielder. Sumachandra De Silva, a left-arm spinner who relied on flight and variation to outfox batsmen. He had good control over his deliveries and was also a handy lower-order batsman. Antonio Potter, a tall and fast right-arm bowler who generated good bounce and pace off the pitch. He had a smooth run-up and was known for his ability to swing the ball both ways. As an associate member and not a test-playing nation, Sri Lanka's form heading into the World Cup was not as well documented as that of the established cricketing nations. They had limited exposure to international cricket and had played against test-playing nations occasionally in first-class games. Although Sri Lanka had a few talented players, their lack of experience and depth compared to the other teams made them underdogs of the tournament. East Africa were captained by Harilal Shah, who was a batsman and a captain. They also had Zulfikar Ali, a Kenyan all-rounder. Ali contributed with both bat and ball and was a key player for the team. They had Ramesh Sethi, a Ugandan batsman. Sethi was an essential part of the East African batting lineup. The East African team was made up of amateur cricketers who lacked the experience and skill level of the other teams in the competition. They were considered the weaker side in the competition and had limited exposure to international cricket. Also, as evidenced by the lack of any noteworthy cricketers from most of these regions, this whole evangelical approach seems to have failed. In Group A, England emerged as the dominant team, winning all three of their matches. Notable performances included Dennis Amis's 137 and Keith Fletcher's 131 against East Africa. India managed to win only one match against East Africa, which was, East Africa. New Zealand finished second in the group thanks to Glenn Turner's 2 centuries in the group stage. In Group B, the West Indies showcased their talent and potential by winning all of their matches. West Indian batsman Roy Fredericks scored a blistering 169 runs against Australia, which was the highest individual score of the tournament. Australia finished second in the group, with their only loss coming to the West Indies. Pakistan and Sri Lanka failed to progress to the semi-finals. The semi-finals were played between England and Australia and the West Indies and New Zealand. England faced Australia at Headingley, Leeds. Australia won the toss and elected to field. England posted a total of 93 all-out, with Gary Gillette taking a remarkable 6 for 14. In response, Australia initially stumbled, with Gillette top scoring with 28 not out, but eventually they managed to chase down the target with 4 wickets in hand. The second semi-final took place at the Oval in London between the West Indies and New Zealand. The West Indies fielded first and dismissed New Zealand for 159. Glenn Turner scored a 74 ball 36 and Jeff Howarth scored 51 of 93 balls. Bernard Julian was the pick of the bowlers, taking 4 for 27. In response, thanks to Alvin Kalacharan's 72 and captain Clive Lloyd's 53, the Windies cruised to a 5-wicket victory, setting up a final against Australia. The final was held at Lord's Cricket Ground in London. Australia won the toss and opted to field first. The West Indies got off to a shaky start, losing their openers early, but Clive Lloyd played a captain's innings, scoring a magnificent 102 of 85 balls. Contributions from Rohan Kanai, who scored 55, and Keith Boyce, who scored 34, helped the West Indies reach 291 for 8 in their 60 overs. For Australia, Gary Gillette was again the pick of the bowlers with 5 for 48. In response, Australia lost wickets at regular intervals. Despite half-centuries from Ian Chappell, who scored 62, and Doug Walters, who scored 35, Australia could only manage 274 all-out. Keith Boyce, who had made valuable runs earlier, took 4 for 50, while Van Benholder and Bernard Julian took 2 wickets each. Viv Richards was maybe the pick of the Windies in the field that day, effecting a World Cup finals record 3 run-outs on the day. Equally importantly, 2 of the run-outs were Turner and Ian Chappell, while the third was the dangerous Australian batsman Greg Chappell. Clive Lloyd was adjudged as man of the match, while the West Indies won the first ever Cricket World Cup by 17 runs, marking the beginning of their dominance in world cricket. This final set the stage for a fierce rivalry between Australia and the West Indies, which would last for the next 2 decades. Both teams boasted exceptional talents and competed fiercely in Test and One-Day international cricket. They exchanged the mantle of the world's best cricket teams several times, producing many memorable contests and legendary performances. In some ways, the World Cup can be seen as a jump-off point for the age of the West Indies. The Windies would lose their next Test series 5-1, but that was a small hitch in what would otherwise be a nearly spotless two-decade run as the premier side in world cricket. England would host the next two World Cups, while East Africa faded to Bolivian, as Mike Tyson would say.
It faded into Bolivian, you know what I mean? I don't have nowhere to go and nothing to do.
Given the fact that the World Cup was the first of its kind, it represented something of a financial windfall. To the degree that England had actually organised a 4-test series against Australia later in the summer in an attempt to balance the books. They would have nothing to worry about, however, as Prudential stepped up and offered a £100,000 sponsorship. This helped the tournament achieve a total profit of £200,000, of which England were granted 10%. The other nations were given 7.5%, or £15,000, which is £108,000 in today's money. The Windies received £4,000 for winning the tournament, about £28,000 today, while Australia, the losing team, received £2,000. The losing semi-finalists received £1,000, while man of the matches received £50 in the group stages, £100 in the semis, and £200 in the final. There was no player of the tournament in the early editions of the World Cup, but Len Turner was the leading run scorer with 333 runs, and Gary Glimmer was the leading wicket taker with 11 wickets. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the 1975 World Cup. Counting the first ever Tri-Nations tournament, it took 63 years to get there, but it would only take 4 years to get to the next one.